So when we analyze antiques and collectibles for their investment potential, you need to understand that there's different fundamentals, obviously, for analyzing a collectible or an antique versus that of traditional assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, even real estate. See, if you want to analyze the value or the potential returns for investing in AT&T stock or Dow Chemical stock or Iron Mountain stock, you can look at something called the PE ratio, price per share versus earnings per share. You can look at the debt to asset ratio. You can look at the return on equity. You can look at how their sales have been over the past few years, what products they have coming into the pipeline, what the proverbial markets that they serve, what's going on in those markets. Is there increased competition? Is there less competition? Are they leaders of the proverbial markets that they serve? All this you can break down and quantify in neat little numbers so that you know whether or not it's worth investing in those particular stocks, i.e. companies, over the short term or over the long term. Now, full disclosure, you guys know, I tell you guys, if you're going to invest in the stock market, best way to do it is through an index fund. I'm just bringing this up because you got to understand that the fundamentals of investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, real estate are extremely different than that of investing in antiques and collectibles. Even antiques and collectibles are different. Antiques overall are more stable. They're not as volatile in certain instances, with exceptions. There are some that are, as collectibles. People love collectibles because they think they can 10 times their money in a short period of time. And in certain cases, they can. But with that ability to do that, there's also the risk that the market could turn sideways. Look what happened in the market for graded video games. Look what happened even in the vintage comic book market, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Since the pandemic, there is a pullback on an aggregate average of 10 to 30% in this market as a whole. I did a video on the Reddit user that pretty much would lose $69,000 if he sold his books that he bought during the all-time highs during the pandemic into the market today. He would take a loss on those particular books, and my heart goes out to him. But that particular individual did make a lot of mistakes buying those books at that particular time. And what he bought and how he went about it was pretty much wrong from an investment standpoint. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you in real time how I analyze the market for a collectible from an investment standpoint. So the book we are going to be talking about today is a copy of Batman 181, First Appearance of Poison Ivy, in CGC 9.2 condition with off-white to white pages. And I shouldn't tell you this, but I am going to tell you this. This book is actually coming up for bid in the March 30th, March 31st, 2023 Comics and Comic Art Signature Auction that is going to be hosted through Heritage. So that's why I'm doing this video. Now, I am going to even tell you what I value this particular book at. And when we get to that point in the video, some of you guys are going to laugh at me because you're going to say, well, man, he valued that book off, or he really valued that book low. There is a method to my reason, guys. You see, I'm an investor. I'm not a collector. I'm not a speculator. When I come into these markets, I already have a price point that I'm willing to pay for the item in question. So if I go to auction and I bid on that particular item, if I'm outbid, I'm not upset. I don't get emotional because usually I'm bidding on, just to put this in perspective, I'm usually looking at a multitude of collecting categories, even antiques, and I'm bidding on a multitude of items at any given time. I don't expect to win them all. I expect to honestly win literally 1 out of 10 or 20 items I bid on. That's it, guys. And the reason being is because I analyze these markets from that of an investor. I'm not a collector. I'm not a speculator. So if somebody comes into the market and says, ooh, the Batman 181, I'm willing to pay X number of dollars for that particular book. We're going to talk about this today. And me, Reserved Investments, is only willing to pay a lower number than that particular individual. Guess what? He's the greater fool in that scenario. He's going to win the book. He can take it. He won it fair and square. I'm not upset because I'm an investor. I'm not a collector. I'm not a speculator. I know the price I'm willing to pay. And this really gets under the skin of certain individuals because it kind of upsets them because they get upset because they can't bid me up. They can't get me emotional. I don't care. There's a ton of this stuff out there. Even a book like this that is truly scarce. I will find it again if I don't win it. You guys need to adopt that mindset. So how do we analyze a book like this? Well, let's talk about Batman 181. For those unaware, Batman 181 features the first appearance of Poison Ivy, which is a villain in the Batman universe. It was published in June of 1966, which is quite ironic because the publication date is 666, which is quite interesting to me. Well, with that being said, this book is scarce. There are roughly 32 copies graded in 9.2 condition. And when we start looking at other grades, if we look at 9.4, there's only 20 copies. If we look at 9.6, there's only 9 known copies. If we look at 9.8, there's only 3 known copies. Now, when you compare a book like this to Giant Size X-Men 1, which has 219 copies alone in 9.8 condition, you can kind of see the difference. You can kind of see that this book is much more scarce. It's going to be much more harder to find in higher grade. Now, to be fair, I know what my critics are going to say. Well, Sean, I don't think you understand. Giant Size X-Men 1 is a mega key. Batman 181 is a key in the Batman universe, but overall, let's be realistic. Is Poison Ivy really on par with Giant Size X-Men 1? And you would be right in that analysis. I'm just pointing out that if you're a Batman fan, this book is scarce. It's not a rare book, but it's not up there like an Incredible Hulk 181. It's not like an Amazing Spider-Man 300 where there's thousands of copies available in 9.8 condition. This book is truly scarce. And that's why I like books like this. I'm done with going after the major keys in extremely high grade. I got out of that when prices went up to a certain amount to the point where I sold a lot of those books into the market behind the scenes, and I ended up profiting handsomely. Now, if you guys understand the concept of the optimal collecting grade, I preach this in a lot of other videos. By now, you should all understand the concept of the optimal collecting grade. In my opinion, if you're going to go after a Batman 181, you want to get it at least in 9.2 condition, which this particular book that's coming up at auction is. Now, why is that important? Because again, when we go back to the CGC census, if you're looking at this book, there's 32 copies in 9.2 condition. There are 53 copies in 9.0 condition. You are better off getting this book in 9.2 condition rather than spending more to get it 9.4 or spending less to get it in 9.0 condition. Let me just state that right off the bat. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complex because we got to talk about this because this book is extremely volatile. Let me explain what I mean. Right now, as I sit here recording this video, the overall aggregate average of the vintage comic book marketplace since the pandemic has pulled back roughly 10 to 30%. Now, again, that's an aggregate average. Some books have done better than that. A few books have done worse. Some books didn't change at all. Like if you go and you look up a Batman 227, while we're on the topic of Batman, I might as well bring this up. Batman 227 in 9.6 condition is actually starting to trend upward, even with the downtick in prices for overall CGC graded vintage comic books. That is a prime example of another book that I truly like for that reason. I'm a contrarian in a lot of these markets, guys. That's how I do what I do. So with that being said, the problem that I have right now, especially with a book like this, if we just use the data that is provided by Heritage themselves. So I'm on the Heritage website, I'm signed in, and this is the information that Heritage gives me. They give me this for free, simply for utilizing their website. In January 17th of 2021, a copy of Batman 181 in CGC 9.2 condition sold for $6,000. And here's the rub, guys. Ironically, this book that sold for $6,000 was a Pacific Coast pedigree. Now, in the year 2023, Overstreet lists the value of Batman 181 in 9.2 condition at $7,000. Now, I don't put much stock in the Overstreet because obviously most in-demand CGC graded comic books in high grade go for multiples of the Overstreet price guide. Not always, but usually there's a rule of thumb. If something's listed in 9.2 condition for $7,000, it's usually going to sell for more than that at auction if it's a true in-demand key, especially like a scarce book like this. Well, if we do our research here, again, I'm not utilizing Go Collect yet. I'm not using GP analysis, just on the Heritage site. Another copy of Batman 181 in CGC 9.2 condition with off-white to white pages sold back in June 19th, 2022 for $14,400. Now, the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters don't understand the significance of these two numbers. I'm here to tell you, this book, this market is extremely volatile, meaning risk versus reward. You can lose a lot of money in this market, just like you can make a lot of money in this market. You got to use caution. The spread of this book, just based on those two price numbers I gave you, is anywhere from $6,000 all the way up to $14,400. Now, I'm not going to use GP analysis in this scenario. I log on to Go Collect. Go Collect tells me that the fair market value of this book at present time is $15,500. Now, so I don't overshoot my shot in this video and make the video 20 to 30 minutes, I'm going to tell you what I would be willing to pay for this book. And this is where you guys are going to hate me. When I analyze the value of this book, knowing that this book has a spread of $6,000 to $14,400 in a period under 2 years, meaning in 2 years, this book sold from $6,000 all the way up to $14,400. If I'm bidding on this book, guess what? The max price I am willing to pay for this comic book is $10,000. And really, I would love to get it for $9,000 or $9,500. Anything more than that, I'm out. If you're bidding me up on this book, you put in a bid tonight of $10,500, you own this Batman 181 as far as I'm concerned. Now, somebody else may bid you up. You may not get it, but you will outbid me on this comic book. Why is that? Because I'm an investor. I am not comfortable paying $15,500 or even $14,400 for a Batman 181 at present time. And I know what my critics are going to say. Well, Sean, potentially that book could go for $20,000. It may very well go for $20,000. It potentially could. Hell, in the last 2 years, it went from $6,000 all the way up to $14,400. I'm not comfortable paying more than $9,000 to $10,000 for this book at present time. That's the way I think. I don't get emotionally attached to these items. If I go into the market and I put a bid out there for $9,500 or $10,000 for this book and I don't get it, guess what? It's no big deal because at any given time, I'm also bidding on 10 to 20 other items. So I'm going to probably win one or two of those other items. It's not going to hurt me if I didn't get this particular Batman 181. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, this is where you have to be careful. If you're a high-profile investor and you're coming into this market and you want to go after an Action Comics 1, a Detective Comics 27, a Batman 1, a book that's really, really scarce, if not rare, and is also going to set you back a significant amount of money on the market, I really hate to tell you, if you're bidding on that particular book in today's market, you're going to have to pay a premium for it. You're going to have to bite the bullet and almost overpay to get it. This, however, if you do overpay to get it, you must understand the opportunity cost and the time value of tying up your money in an item like this. Because right now, a money market account at Vanguard is going to pay you roughly 4.5%. What did the Fed already signal? We're going to be raising our rates even more as we go into the future. So at some point in the next year, most likely, that Vanguard money market account is going to potentially pay 5%, 5.25% on average. Let me just do basic math with you. $10,000 in a money market account that's just paying 5% without allowing the money to compound, meaning the interest, you're taking the interest out as it accumulates every month. You're going to earn $500 a year in interest. Now, going back to this scenario with the fact that I'm willing to pay $10,000 for this book, this is what I have to ask myself. If I win this book for $10,000, is it worth me buying the book, putting it in a safety deposit box, when I can simply take that $10,000, put it in a Vanguard money market fund, and collect 4.5%, 5% of interest on that money? That's what you have to ask yourself. I will not pay $14,000 or $15,000 for this particular book at present time because, in my mind, as an investor, it would be worth parking the $14,000 or $15,000 in a money market account. But if I can get Batman 181 CGC 9.2 for $9 to $10 grand, it's worth it for me to own the comic book. That is the cutoff point. That's how I analyze these markets. I know a lot of you out there in comic book land, you're going to think I'm nuts. Some of you are going to agree with me. Some of you are going to call me a genius. Others of you are going to call me an idiot. This is how I analyze these markets, guys. Again, this market is extremely volatile. Again, quick review. In 2021, this book sold for $6 grand, and that was a Pacific Coast pedigree. In 2022, this book sold, that wasn't a Pacific Coast pedigree, for $14,400. Go Collect, they have it calculated where the fair market value of this book is $15,500. It is not worth $14,000 or even $15,000 in my eyes as an investor. It is worth $9,000 to $10,000. Therefore, if I bid on this book, you guys want to outbid me? Feel free. I just told you one of the items I'm going to be bidding on in the next month. Enjoy. Let me know your comments in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.